Peter Kelly from ISG.
I have quite a long title actually. It's Group Director of Sustainable Operations. You don't go into sustainability because you do it for the money. You do it because you're passionate about the environment. I started actually labouring for a concrete contractor in London just to get money really. I loved it. I love the crack, as we call it, from my Irish heritage. You come in and someone would have put a 9-inch nail through your boot. Encourage anybody, to go and see other cultures. It makes you such a more well-rounded individual. McAlpine's opened my mind to how much of an impact construction has on the environment. I'm probably most known for circularity, so that's my real passion, which is the reuse of materials and keeping materials in use. The marketplace is what we need. You need the Amazon of reused materials. Generally, it's felt that sustainability costs more, and I don't believe that is true.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Thriving Construction with me, Darren Evans. Today we have with us Peter Kelly from ISG. Peter, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Good, fantastic. So, Peter, can you just, for the listeners and those people that are watching, just briefly cover the job that you do and what it is you like about it?
So I have quite a long title actually. It's Group Director of Sustainable Operations, which is a little bit of a mouthful. And that basically means that previously I was responsible for the operational side of our business when it comes to sustainability. So how our projects run, our construction projects run, delivering for our clients, but also implementing our ISG's sustainability ESG strategy. But since I've taken over the leadership of the team now, I'm encompassing everything. So I have to run the team and look after the budget and do all the other things that not just operational side of it. So the title hasn't changed, but overall I'm the sustainability director, for want of a better term.
For and this is department. For the whole of ISG?
The whole of ISG globally, yeah.
Globally,
yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
So just for those people that aren't that familiar with ISG's global reach, where does that go? And
so we have three main markets really. We have our Iberian business, which is obviously Spain and Portugal. We have the German and Swiss business, which are usually paired together, and then we have the Middle East, so Dubai, Abu Dhabi. They're the core areas and regions. And then we may do data centers in other parts of Europe as well, but they're the core areas.
Good. And of those areas, which ones are growing the quickest?
There's a big market for Germany at the minute for office fit out, which is our specialism abroad. And then we see growth in the Spanish and Portugal around data centers, and then potentially into the Nordics as well in the future.
Okay.
So those would be the two growth areas. The Middle East is fairly stable. Singapore, relatively not small scale, but small scale by our standards, the UK side, but very stable, really good clients, and they do a really good job.
Good. What is it you love about your job?
Do you know what? It always comes back to the people, doesn't it? Sustainability people I think, are slightly different or can relate to other people that are passionate about their roles. You don't go into sustainability because you do it for the money or you do it for anything else. You do it because you're passionate about the environment and carbon and whatever else. So I think that sets us apart a little bit, and I'm sure there are other passion careers out there too that I can't think of. But for sustainability, I think that's what makes it for us. And my team are very passionate about what they do, and they want to make change and they want to see progress, etc. And that's a great place to be in when you're leading a team of very passionate, very intelligent people that just want to see change, innovate, and deal with this climate crisis that we've got.
I think you're quite right. In this, with my team, everybody is passionate about not just the way that we treat the planet, but I think also the way that we treat other people.
Definitely.
I don't know if do you find the same in your team
100%. Yeah, we've done the we call it the colours piece, the Jung's personality traits, and we all come out on the introverted, come on a green-blue side, which is very much the caring, making sure everybody's included, make sure there's a voice, everyone's voice is heard, and the majority of us come out that side, not the red, yellow side. A bit of yellow, obviously, around the passionate side, but not so much the red. The bull in the china shop kind of. We're not really like that. And funnily enough, most of the other construction people are, because they're on site. They can be a little
get stuff
red
done.
at times. We need to get stuff done.
So how do you find that those blend together then when you've got an organization such the size of ISG where you have got those different personality types?
Yeah, I'm sure it's in the same in any organization really, but yeah, we do tend to have more on the red side, but we're a support function. We rarely have people full-time on projects, and they would obviously be part of the project team. So I think a lot of it is a bit of quid pro quo, really. I'll do something for you if you help me out with this, that, and the other. So it's a lot of relationship building, a lot of stakeholder engagement that our site teams, my team do with our site teams in order to get what they need achieved. And I think it works well in that sense, in that they're not there every day, but when they come in, they have to make those relationships and ask the project teams to do what they need to do.
Good. Where was it you started on this journey, and how would someone get to the level that you're at the moment?
Oh, so I started when I was probably 19, so that's a long time ago now, over 20 years ago. I started actually labouring for a concrete contractor in London, just to get money, really.
So when you say labouring, are you talking like moving bricks from point A to point B and mixing cement and those types of?
Yeah, it was a concrete contractor, so it's a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of what we call the formwork that needs to be stacked, a lot of ply, sheets of ply. I'm not sure if you'd even be allowed to carry one sheet of ply by yourself anymore, but back then you had to.
On your shoulder?
Concrete, just up on the shoulder, concrete, pouring concrete, sweeping, tidying. I used to make a lot of cubes, which is the testing cubes for the concrete, because I was a bit younger at the time. My mate's dad worked for a firm, and he was working with this, and come and work from here, you get treated like an adult, and you certainly did. Like there was no airs and graces about having a young person on site. You were just treated the same as everyone else. Okay. You had to grow up quickly. So it was good. I really enjoyed it because I enjoyed the responsibility of being treated like an adult, and that's where I started really. And then
and so in that part there, did you get lots of practical jokes and things?
Yeah,
like
of course. That's just part of. I loved it. I loved the crack, as we call it, from my Irish heritage. Like we used to get. You come in and someone would have put a 9-inch nail through your boot, so when you went to put your boot on, it would be nailed to the floor, and you'd have to then.
Oh right, so the other way through your boot, not
no. They wouldn't want to hate you, hurt you. They wouldn't want to hurt you, but you'd be like trying to get this boot, the big nail stuck in it into the floor, and you'd have to try and get a hammer and yank it off. And then of course you'd have a hole in your boot, which when it rained wasn't great either. But there was all sorts of mick taking, but I loved it. It was great. I mean, as long as you gave as good as you got, no one got offended, and it was all
fantastic. Just
part of what went on, really, just to make the day go with a bit of crack, really.
A lot different than Waitrose, right?
Very different. Very honestly, couldn't be. I mean, I had a good time at Waitrose.
And so you were how old when this happened?
19.
So from 19, then where did you go next when you?
So I went to university.
While still working as a labourer?
Yeah. So they would take me back. Luckily, they must have liked me, and I think obviously my friend's dad working there probably helped. But I would just ring up the one of the foremen, and he would say, "Yeah, go down to this job," and I would do summers and any time I really needed some money, really, like Easter, Christmas, I could go and work, and they'd say, "Yeah, go down here," and I'd turn up, and away we go again. So. I loved it, really. Especially going through university, it was good money. I wasn't paying tax because I didn't earn enough to pay tax. So everything I got paid, I kept, and that really helped. For example, I used to pay Orange at the time £100, and that would pay for my entire year's worth of mobile phone bills, or £150.
So this is the pre-EE, isn't it?
Yeah, Orange, exactly. Yes. So I used to do things like that because I had the money. I thought, well, what am I going to end up paying for this year? So I'd try and pay in advance and be sensible. So I loved it. It was great. I went to university.
What did you study?
I did a geography degree.
Yes.
And then I was fortunate enough to get some 50% funding to do a master's degree, environmental science, which I loved.
Did you do that back to back then?
Yeah, I did it back to back. Yeah. My professor at the time, who I was doing a lot of work with, was like, right, why don't you, you've done well, so we should be able to get you some funding to do the masters.
Great.
I stayed on to do that year, and then I stayed on again afterwards for another probably 8 months doing some research with him. And I was going to do a PhD actually, but there was a bit of a scandal at the EU at the time around funding. So some of his funding got pulled, and
was that the only reason you didn't do the PhD?
Yeah, well, I think I suppose it would have been easy because I would have just continued in the same vein, and he would have had the money and been able to fund it. But when the funding dried up, it gave me a chance to take stock really, and I decided to go travelling. Funnily enough, so I went back to Getjar, the concrete firm, earned some money, and then went travelling.
Where did you go?
Oh, I went all over. I went to India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and Australia. So it was a great time.
And your favourite spot of the?
Oh, Nepal.
Nepal,
yeah, doing the trek. I did a trek in Nepal around Annapurna, and it was the best thing I've ever done. I loved it, yeah. Really, really enjoyed it.
On your own or with friends?
No, luckily a friend came out and met me, and we did it together. I went travelling with a very good friend, but we would dip in and out of each other. We were on the same path, but we we didn't live in each other's pockets. She actually met her husband while we were travelling, and an Australian chap, so she lives in Australia now with him. But another friend came out because he'd been to Nepal before, and we did the trek together. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I'd love to go back, but life gets in the way.
Kids and
mortgages and God knows what else. One day, definitely.
And so, what would you say was the big thing that you learned as you were traveling?
It just opens your mind completely to other cultures and how other people live, and it makes you. I think it makes you a much more well-rounded person. You have to look after yourself, be sensible, all the rest of it, and then have fun. And I think it just definitely opens your mind to how other people live and the respect you need to have for other cultures and other people. And it's always been the biggest thing. It's just that eye-opening ability to go from India to Sri Lanka even is so different.
Different cultures.
Just so different. Like there's no pubs in India. You go to Sri Lanka and the first thing there is a normal British pub, and you're like, wow, I haven't seen one of these for weeks. And you can go and actually have a pint, and they have Sky Sports on the telly, and it's different to where you've just been. And then Nepal is different again, and then Southeast Asia. Just the difference between the countries that are right next to each other. It was really good.
I've never been to India, but we have someone for my company, that works in my company that is from India. And she explains the diversity and the difference that is within India, north to south, is really, really, really different.
Yeah, I went I did the Golden Triangle around Delhi, and then went down to the west coast, down to Varkala, and along the beaches all along there. So very different environments. A lot of traveling, long train journeys. But again, I just loved it. I mean, I didn't have anything else to do. So sitting on
So when your children are at that age, 19, 20-ish, would you encourage them to?
100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would encourage anybody. I mean, it is difficult now with climate change. You do have guilt about flying and other things that are contributing. But yeah, if there's a way they could do it more sustainably, maybe by train or but the experience, definitely. 100%. I'd encourage anybody, to go and see other cultures. It makes you such a more well-rounded individual, I think, personally. Anyway.
So you've come back then as this well-rounded, cultured individual now from
and then
where you were before. It was Ireland, wasn't it? You were brought up?
I wasn't brought up in Ireland. I was brought up in London. My parents are Irish.
Oh, right. Okay,
so they came over in the 60s, late 60s.
Okay.
But I came back, and again, I didn't know what I was doing. So I went back to concrete again. And I thought, well, I can't do this for the rest of my life, I think they would have kept me on and trained me up if I wanted to stay, but I was like, it's long hours and it's hard work, it's and without
when you say hard work, you mean
physically hard work, and it was cold. Like you go out in the winter and it's 7:00, 7:30, and it's cold on site. Like you have to work hard to warm up, kind of thing. But I thought, without meaning to sound arrogant, I thought, well, I have half a brain cell. I need to do something a bit more mentally challenging than just physically challenging. So I got a phone call from a recruitment consultant to go and work for Multiplex at Wembley Stadium. Oh. And I was like, wow, well, I couldn't turn that down. So somehow I got the job. And it was slightly different. It was in health and safety with a little bit of environment, not so much environment, but it was more a health and safety role, really. because I've been looking after health and safety and some of the paperwork side of it. I wasn't just labouring anymore. They'd got me to do other things because they said, "Oh well, Pete, anything they kind of didn't know what to do. Oh, Pete can do that." Doing timesheets and dealing with the office and everything that I suppose project managers at the time just didn't want to be dealing with. They wanted to be out on site. They were like, "Oh, Pete can do that." Health and safety and God knows what else they were doing, permits and all sorts of stuff, meeting the stuff that I had to do for the main contractor at the time. And then I got this role at Wembley Stadium for 18 months, being a health and safety advisor for Multiplex, which again I really enjoyed, walking out on that pitch for the first time and seeing the biggest crane in, I think it's either Europe or the world at the time, the biggest crawler crane I think probably existed at that time, was sat in the middle of the pitch, and I was like, wow, this is a different level again from the kind of smaller concrete contracting I was doing previously.
So did you feel that you kind of made it in a way by walking out and seeing that site, and that this was the national...
No, I don't think so. Stadium? I probably thought, what am I doing here? I get here, yeah. Well,
someone's going to find me out.
Yeah, or do I know enough to be here? You kind of keep your head down and pick it up as quick as you can, and away you go. It was quite stressful. I did enjoy the responsibility of kind of being known as the health and safety person. I think is tough, because you're not responsible for people's safety, but you are out there trying to make sure that people are working safely, and I had my own area. I had a couple of basements around the pitch area to look after, and you're just walking the sites all day, talking to the operatives and the site and the subcontractors all day. But yeah, I really loved it. I learned a lot. Obviously, had a very good line manager at the time who taught me a lot, and I learned a lot from. And then, of course, Multiplex unfortunately didn't have any work, I think, post Wembley. So they basically said, well, we'll see what we can do, but no promises really. So of course, I thought, what am I going to do now? And I actually had planned to go into construction and project management, go down that route. But I sent out my CV to all the major contractors at the time. And Sir McAlpine came back to me and said, well, why don't you come and join our environmental team? Because you've got a geography and environmental science education, but you've got construction experience, which we find quite hard to get, people that have actually know their way around a construction site.
And a significant bit of construction experience as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. By then, yeah, definitely. And I said, wow, I didn't even know environment existed. You could do a job in this. I was like, wow, this is crazy. So I was like, hell yeah, I'll go for that rather than go down the project management route that I'd have to retrain it. And I thought, yes, I'll go and work in the environmental team at Sir McAlpine. There was only 3 of us at the time, I think. One guy out on one of the big projects, myself and my boss, and she had just implemented ISO 14001, and it was my job to go out and audit and check and make sure the projects were delivering against it. So I was all over the country. I'd never been to some of the cities that I'd gone to. A lot of traveling, a lot of visiting people. Loved it. Loved meeting people, and got to meet lots of different people, different projects. You got that really regional experience where the Welsh and the Bristolians are completely different to the Londoners, and they're completely different to the Geordies, and completely different to the Manchester, and they're different to the Scottish, and you got to know all the different regions, and they're such lovely people. Really always made you feel really welcome and all the rest of it. So I enjoyed that too.
So it's interesting you mentioned that now, because the thing that's in my mind is, okay, you're married. I can see the ring on your finger. I know you've got a couple of kids. You're touring across the country.
Well, back then I didn't.
What's the nationality of your wife?
Yeah, she's London Irish as well.
Okay.
Her parents. But at the time, I didn't have Angela then. It was I was much younger then. I wasn't married, so I was able to go and travel around the country then without too much responsibility.
Good. Love it. So you finished that. You're working from Sir McAlpine. This is in London.
Predominantly based in Hemel Hempstead, actually, of all places. That's where their head office. Well, I'm not sure if they called it the head office, but everyone called it the head office where they were based. So I used to drive up to Hemel, and then as I said, I'd be out to Bristol or wherever the projects were to visit the sites and make sure to do some site inspections and audits, etc.
So what was it then that kept you in the sustainability area? So you've got lots of different experience within construction. The thing that you wanted to do, it sounds like, was to kind of use your mind and your intellect, at least if not equal to, but more than your physical body.
Yeah.
So what was it that kept you in the sustainability? Because there are so many different areas within the construction industry that you could go into.
Well, I suppose McAlpine's opened my mind to how much of an impact construction has on the environment.
Okay.
I had to learn the legislation, and if anybody does a similar role to me, they'll know there's a lot of different legislation that covers everything from bats to noise to oil storage. You know, there's a lot of legislation out there that you have to get your head around. And once you realize, wow, the impact of just managing the natural environment alone at that stage, this is long before carbon was important or circularity or social value or any of that. It was all about environmental control, and you realize, wow, we have a big impact, and we have to make sure that we maintain and don't breach legislation and keep the environment safe. So I thought, wow, this is great. Like I'm actually making sure that we're not polluting, we're not causing a nuisance, we're not waste, we're not disposing of waste illegally, etc. And it was great. I enjoyed it. That's where the passion for construction, was always there, but this felt like the best fit for me because it aligned a passion for construction because I think I enjoy being outside a lot. I wasn't the kind of person I thought that could sit in an office.
I guess that's going back to the days of
but even in McAlpine's, you go out to site, it's always a different day, it wasn't, I
different
think,
people as well, I
guess, different people. I don't think I could have just gone to an office at the age of 19 and just sat there and moved to office to office. Like, it would have driven me nuts. Like, I enjoy being out, I enjoy as you say, meeting people, just the fresh air. That's changed a bit more lately in my career, but certainly back then I enjoyed the variety of different day, different challenge. I remember being sent to the Edinburgh Tattoo. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, just for people that may not, just explain that.
It's basically, Scottish people probably kill me now, but it's a festival at Edinburgh Castle, which is known as the Tattoo. I'm not going to go down the detail because I get it wrong, but basically McAlpines were contracted to build a new, almost like temporary arena that could be put up and taken down every year, so the tattoo could be held.
So the tattoo's like a concert,
a
festival, so there's live bands playing.
Spot on. Yeah, but it's very. It can be quite. There's a lot of traditional piping and that kind of thing. It's all. I think the tattoo itself is all around the Scottish music and culture and all that kind of thing. But we had to take down these ancient monuments. I'll never forget it. These ancient monuments, they're actual statues outside Edinburgh Castle, and take them away and clean them and all the rest, and then bring them back. And if you damage these, like, you're in trouble. So I remember watching these being slung and put on the back of wagons, going, "Please don't break, please don't break." And then we had to put some cabling into the castle. Of course, we had archaeologists there in case when we dug the trench, we found anything. And then we had to drill through the Edinburgh Castle wall. Did you? Got special permission to drill through the wall to put this cable. I felt so sorry for this guy, with me, an archaeologist, someone from the actual castle. There was like 4 of us watching this poor bloke trying to core drill through.
Oh, really?
All
eyes on this one guy.
Watching this poor guy,
just, little bit more to the left.
Just I felt so sorry for it.
I guess those walls are
very thick,
right?
Very thick.
So there's one guy, massive drill head.
Yeah. Trying to bore through this hole so we could put a cable through it with all these people.
Did you applaud after?
I think it's more relief.
On the floor, he's like,
more relief that we got through and we didn't disturb or find anything of significance that he just cored through or anything. That was the main problem. But that was the kind of responsibility of standing there going, wow, like, if this goes wrong, this could be costly, from a legislative point of view and from a monetary point of view. But that's the kind of things we got up to back then. It's good.
That's good. How did you end up at ISG then, from working at McAlpine?
As I said, I was doing a lot of travelling at the time, and I got stuck at Aberdeen Airport where the EasyJet cancelled the flight and left me there. And I had to turn up. I had to find my own hotel.
So just for that there, I guess EasyJet just weren't picking on you, and it wasn't like a
Oh
personal
no,
thing.
they just
There was
cancelled the
something
flight
went
late
on
on.
somewhere.
Yeah. It was
Okay,
a late
the flight
night.
was
It was
done.
the last flight of the evening, and they just cancelled it, and
Okay.
just we had to go and find our own
Catch you in the morning.
hotel and fly
Right.
back and claim it all back. And
Right.
I flew back to Heathrow. My car was at Luton, and I just thought, right,
So you had to get from Heathrow to Luton.
I had to go home and then get a train up to Luton to pick up the car. And then by then I'd had Rory, or my wife had Rory, and we were together. And I just thought, I can't be doing this anymore. Like my wife's at home, I've got a young child.
Yeah.
So it was all changing McAlpines anyway, and it was a good time for me to.
Yeah.
I'd been there nearly 8 years.
Okay.
I kind of sat through a recession, and I just thought, I want to be based in London now. I need to be home every evening. Yeah, and I applied and thankfully got a job at ISG.
And what was it you started doing at ISG when you first got there? What was the job you applied for?
So I applied for a regional sustainability manager, I think it was called at the time. So I looked after the construction London, the Ipswich office, and the Tunbridge Wells office at the time.
Okay.
And I think we had a high-end residential business as well. So yeah, anything that was delivered out of the Ipswich, Tunbridge Wells, or London offices, plus this high-end resi stuff I was looking after from a sustainability perspective.
Yeah, great. And what is it that you specialise in now in the role that you're in? I know that you've got a team of about 9 people. Is that right?
Yeah, there's probably about 7 or 8 report to me directly. 7 or 8, okay. And then there's a bigger team outside that across the business. Yeah.
But what's your particular area of either expertise or area of interest?
I suppose I'm probably most known for circularity. So that's my real passion, which is the reuse of materials and keeping materials in use, hopefully in perpetuity. At the minute, a lot of those materials are stripped out and sent for downcycling, I call it, really. Recycling, downcycling, not kept in use. So that's
just for the benefit of those people that aren't that familiar with this concept, can you just talk through that and what that actually looks like from a practical sense?
Yeah, so at the minute we have what we call a linear economy. We have a take, make and dispose. So you buy something, you discard it, and it will generally end up being recycled or landfilled. And that has horrendous carbon and environmental impacts. So what we're trying to do, not just in construction, but in many industries, is to keep what is made in use back in, so what we call a circular economy. So, for example, commonly reused materials in construction are raised access floor panels, which we use a lot in offices. Carpet tiles are often reused, but we want to expand that to some of the other products that we use a lot of. Ceiling tiles is a good example, partitioning systems, etc., etc. So that's where we need to get to. We need to collaborate with the whole built environment to get that going. But we've had some really good successes. We've taken some lights out of one particular office in central London and reused them in Cambridge.
I was going to ask about lighting, if that extends to lighting, and then also if it extends to things like steel and windows and glazing, those types of things as well.
Steel is probably the most developed in terms of taking steel out of one building and putting it in another. There are some big players in that market now, and it's becoming more and more common that a percentage of that steel can be reused elsewhere. The main challenges are around what we call like the kind of passive materials, which is what I'd call a piece of steel. It doesn't do anything but be a piece of steel compared to an active piece of kit, which tends to be something that needs to do something, like a light or an air conditioning unit or whatever it is. And they're more challenging because they usually would come with warranties and guarantees and all the rest of it. So
they've got the ability to break down and not work anymore. Where you're saying a piece of steel is it's always going to remain, right?
Yeah, a piece of steel usually has an extended design life, and as long as it's not damaged or touched by fire or anything like that, you usually can reuse a piece of steel. I think there are some time frames around that. I can't remember the exact dates, but if there's older than 1970 or something, then it's a bit more challenging. But more modern steel is very, very reusable.
Yeah, great. Okay. And so within this then, do you think that we're ever going to get to a point where someone will design a property based on what is available from other properties that are being dismantled in some way, shape, or form?
I would hope so. I would hope so. There are a lot of architectural practices out there now that want to do this and are doing it to some extent.
Is there a word for that? Or I just made that up?
No, it's just the circular economy, really, in construction. The marketplace is what we need. Is you need the Amazon of reused materials,
Right.
And we get contacted even today for materials that are available for reuse, but it's the supply and demand. You need to find somebody immediately that needs those materials, because then you're into storage, which has time and expense, etc. So it's complex.
I've got a good friend of mine who he runs his own company and he does staging for large events. He'll do concerts, he'll do TV and show. He'll do like large stadium awards as well. He's done some things for the World Cup, and where they've got those stages that are being created specifically for concerts, I think. And then towards the end of that production that's put on, he will then try and find someone that he can put bits of the staging off to. And he said what frustrates him the most is after everything has been either thrown away or recycled, most of it thrown away, someone then comes to him and says, "Oh, have you got this?" And he's like, if you would have just come to me 2 weeks before, you could have had it.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Yeah, it's that marketplace, as I said. You need to have that marketplace of availability. The donor is the easy bit. I think there's lots of people that can donate materials. At the minute, a lot of the materials that tend to be reused haven't been used at all. So they're like unused materials. What we need to get to is what I call post-consumer materials, where we're taking stuff out and reusing it. But it's that ability to have those materials somewhere that somebody knows they exist.
Yes.
So not only do you need the marketplace, which is preferably some storage, but you also need an online platform or some way of advertising the fact that those materials exist. And then you need someone to be able to go and pick them up or logistically get them delivered to wherever you need them. And then you're into do they come with the right paperwork and warranties and all that kind of thing. So it is complex and challenging, but I would hope that your scenario will play out in the future.
Because I said that to him. I said, why don't you put it on the marketplace somewhere? I don't know how, but put it on the marketplace somewhere to say, I am building this. These are the materials that I'm using to build it. These are the dimensions. I expect this to be left over afterwards.
Who wants it? Yeah.
Come and see me after this date. Between this date and this date, maybe someone listening will think, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, there are platforms out there, but then it depends, because you don't really want members of the public in construction anyway to be picking up materials. We want to use the logistics we've got and move materials either into storage or to other construction sites where you're using a logistics contractor that understands construction. So
absolutely, this is not an alternative to being
of course.
It's not well, you got 1,500 nails. Okay, well, I'm going to come and take 5. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, but there are platforms out there that will advertising materials for you, but then you've got to organise the logistics and you've got to go and find. They're just a platform. You're not putting you in touch. So you have to do that all yourself and go and pick it up and all the rest of it. So we need a better system that works in the construction industry, so that maybe ISG can't use those materials, but Sorrent McAlpine or a multiplex or another contractor says, yes, I do need them next week. Can you deliver them to me?
So what is it that you and your team are doing, or maybe even ISG are doing, that is being proactive in this space? How are you trying to make this reality come about in the future?
Well, funnily enough, we're working with the finishers interior sector, which is a kind of an industry body, to look at how we can get this off the ground. So a number of contractors, a number of architects, a number of industry bodies have come together to say, okay, we applied for Innovate UK funding. Unfortunately, we didn't receive it. So can we self-fund basically a trial to get some materials from each of our sites? We're going to concentrate predominantly on ceiling tiles just to pick something to start with. Can we get them into storage and can we get them back out to reuse as quickly as possible? So we've only had 2 meetings. We need to find some funding, because obviously somebody will have to manage it, and then we have to pay for some storage. We'll go out to tender for storage, and we'll need to find a project manager. But I don't think it'll be particularly expensive to get a trial. And at least we know if we all put materials in and they sit there for 6 months and nobody wants them, well, at least we tried. But the idea will be if we put some material in stock, then we can try and get it out. And we've all got what we call pipelines of work for next year that we'll know projects coming up. So we'll be able to say, almost predict for the trial period where our projects will be between us all and say, okay, when are you going to need ceiling tiles? When are you going to need this? When are you going to need that? And we can try and make sure that, and even if, for example, ceiling tiles need to be resprayed or whatever it is, we can work with the materials manufacturers to work with us to get this trial off the ground. So fingers crossed for next year.
So what do you think that distributors aren't getting involved in this space?
I think they will get involved once they know that there's a demand. Like anything, they'll probably just say, well, there isn't a demand.
So it's going to be reactive as opposed to what it sounds like you're saying is that this is a proactive thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah, well, we're trying to, as anything I try and do, I try and get proof of concept. Because if I can show somebody it's been done, then they can't tell me it can't be done. Yes. So that's what all we're trying to do is prove in an example that a number of contractors can get some materials into storage and back out for reuse. Yeah. And then if anybody says it can't be done, well, it can be done. We've done it. So. And
who are these companies that are involved?
Well, there's quite a few. There's quite a few. There's all the big fit out contractors, Overbury, ourselves. We've got Perkins and Will Architectural Practice, Orms Architectural Practice. We've got the UK Green Building Council. Yeah, there's a number of people. There's probably 15 people on the call, maybe more.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's really good. It doesn't seem very widely known.
No, because we've only had two meetings. So,
early doors.
Very early doors. We're going to try and get something off the ground next year.
Good, that's good. Good. What is your hope then for the future?
I just hope we can keep the climate within 2 degrees and we can solve this climate crisis that we face. And then subsequent to that, solve the biodiversity crisis that's coming along in that big wave behind the climate crisis. So I think we can do it. I'm really optimistic. If you see, for example, the cost of wind has come down dramatically, and solar over a very short space of time, really. The fact that we don't really use a lot of coal anymore, and who would have thought that however many years ago. So even from 1990 levels, we've really got rid of coal out of our economy. So if we can change that quickly and reduce our emissions by that amount, then I'm hopeful. I think industry needs to play a bigger part. I think everyone can't wait for governments, particularly at the minute. So
what is your thought on that, though? Who do you think should lead that? Because
both, really. You need the government.
Yeah, I'm not saying which one do you get rid of, but which one do you think should lead? Who do you think would have the most impact?
Well, I think personally, it's always business. If businesses can lead the way, then others will follow. And I think there are businesses that out there like ourselves and others that want to make a change and want to reduce our emissions, and it's got to be done.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I think about the major shifts and changes that have gone on in the world, it's been the businesses that have done it, right?
Yeah.
It was Henry Ford that got rid of the horse manure that was on the roads and the need to have those elevated doorways because of all the horse manure that was around. He didn't come up with faster horses. He completely shifted it, and that wasn't the government that did that. And I think the same with everything, really. I can't think of anything that the government have implemented that has changed the way that the world works.
Yeah, I think there are things they have done. I mean, the subsidies for offshore wind and things like that, I think, have really helped.
So I think that's, in my mind at least, that's support as opposed to implementation. So
agreed.
You could argue that the computer was supported by the government because they were trying to find out how do you crack the code for the U-boats, right? Because that's the kind of origins of the computer, but that wasn't really the government that did that. They kind of supported it. And I think
I agree.
That's where I see it, at least government anyways, that they can support. They're a support and a fertilizer, maybe.
I agree. Definitely.
Good. Well, shall we go and talk about myths and try and destroy them? Let's do.
Why not? Yeah.
The demolition zone.
Why not? Bring it on.
So, Peter, this is your myth that you have created. So this kind of, to me, for those that are listening, He's kind of a bit of a tower with a little bit of a lower level on the left-hand side. It's kind of like an L shape, reversed L shape, I would say. Very colourful, very red, very red. What does that represent?
In terms of the myth,
Yes.
my personal take on this is that generally it's felt that sustainability costs more.
Okay.
And I don't believe that is true.
Okay. What leads you to that belief? What leads you to say, actually, sustainability does not, in and of itself, cost more?
What makes me think that that's true or not true?
Yeah, what makes you believe that sustainability doesn't need to cost more or doesn't cost more?
Well, I suppose my career has shown that the problem where it costs more is if it's done too late,
Right.
particularly in construction. If you design in sustainability as you would to meet planning conditions or any other traditional facet of construction, then it doesn't cost anymore because you've designed it in. It's part of the design that somebody can cost, and they shouldn't therefore add on extra cost because it's there in front of them. It's designed in. So we finished a job last year for the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership, which is their new home, which we've won several awards for, thankfully. It's a really great low carbon project, as you'd expect for a client like that. But the ethos of that project was that we're going to do a very deep green retrofit, but it's not going to cost any more than a standard fit out. And that was the ethos from the very beginning, long before even we came along as the contractor to deliver it. And what that meant is that we drove out any extra cost that was perceived. In our supply chain and in ISG, we were questioned all the time about what is that number for? That you do not need to put in some money for that. This is not a risk. This is designed in. It's part of you can see it in the drawings. You can see it in the 3D model. It's there. You don't need to design. This is not going to go wrong. This is all science behind it, etc., etc. So we really worked hard with our supply chain and with the client to design out risk. And that meant that we brought that project in well within the realms of what a standard retrofit would cost or a standard fit out.
So it seems like to me then what you're saying is that the reason that sustainability does in reality cost more is not because of sustainability itself, is because it's poorly planned and done at last minute.
Spot on, yeah. They'll come usually at Ariba stage 4 and say...
Panic.
Yeah, well, or what can we do from a contracting perspective? And you're like, well, there's lots we can do, but it's piecemeal compared to if you got us in at stage 0 or 1 and we'd said, right, this is what we would do to lower your embodied carbon because we understand a lot about materials. So we can say, well, you get the same specification, but this is a lower embodied carbon. We can do a lot about healthy materials or less low impact materials that don't have VOCs or formaldehyde or whatever it is, but we could introduce all of that circularity, reuse of materials, all of that can be designed in at the beginning. But if you try and retrofit that in, it does cost more because you've got to redesign and you've got to swap out materials and all the rest of it.
So what about for those people that would say, well, I'd love to approach you, but the design hasn't been decided yet, or there's a number of things up in the air? I know that's one of the objections that I get when I mention that to clients. Look, bring us in early. We're desperate to start early because we know that we can add a huge amount of value. What would your comment be on the
well, at least we would be part of the process then, wouldn't we? Well, as the design develops and as those ideas, you don't need a full project management team sat on your shoulder at stage 1. You need, probably 2 or 3 people, a bit of cost advice, a bit of planning advice, and some sustainability advice. We're not asking for, a football team worth of people here. We're just saying, if we're part of the process, we can help evolve into that design that you want to see, and it should be more efficient, and it should be buildable, and it should be in line with the costs that are out there in the market. That's what we can do. We've got the supply chain, so we can give you the cost that's going to be real. We've got the ability to understand construction in terms of buildability. We understand the sustainability aspirations and aspects of construction. And if your building is occupied, we can work around that and design for that from the beginning. We can plan for that.
Fantastic. Peter, you can now destroy that myth.
Looking forward to this.
Good stuff. Well, I am sure someone is going to watch this and a light bulb is going to come on and they're just going to take a new approach based on what you've said. That's my hope, at least. Anyway.
Well, that would be great. Yeah. And if anybody does, then yeah, please get in touch. That'd be great.
Peter, it's been great having you here. Thanks for coming along. I'm just wondering, before we go, if I can just ask you one probably tricky question. You ready?
Go for it.
Strapped in. What is the one thing that you want people to understand in more detail or with more clarity now that will make the biggest difference in the construction industry?
Wow, that is a tricky question.
One thing. What one thing do you want people to understand with more clarity now that is going to make the biggest difference in the construction industry?
I think it's got to be around carbon for now. I mean, I think circularity contributes to carbon, but if people can understand the impact that they can have on the construction process to reduce carbon, whether that's being more energy efficient or material efficient, or moving to electric vehicle rather than the diesel or petrol, that kind of thing. They can understand their own carbon impact of what they do and their business does as part of construction. Then I think that would help us, help a major contractor, help our clients to understand our impact and do something about it.
Fantastic. Peter, thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
I'd like you to do me a favor, and I don't mean here just to ask you to subscribe and to follow, but what I'd really like you to do is to share this podcast with as many people as you think would benefit from it. I would love to maintain the quality of people that are joining me on this podcast, and so in order for me to do that, I really need your help. It could be somebody that's looking to get into an industry, but they're not quite sure what industry they want to get into. Maybe it's a teenager that is just finishing their GCSEs or starting A-levels. Maybe it's somebody that's doing an English degree at university, but is not quite sure what they want to do with that degree. So I invite you just to share this podcast with as many people that you know so that we can grow this community, so that we can maintain the quality, engaging conversations that we're having together. Thank you for your help.